So, Mark, why in the world did you ever decide to get into this political business?
David, thank you for this opportunity. And you and I have been longtime friends, and you know a lot of my story and my journey with where I've come from and where I am today. And I got to tell you, the answer to that question's easy. It was something I never dreamed of. Being an elected official was never anything I thought I would have ever would be, and it was never in the cards for me. And in fact, my wife has told me a couple times if she'd have thought there was any hint that I was going to be an elected official someday, that probably would have been a game changer for her. 32 years later, I'm glad to know she's hung in there with me through all of this. But for me, my reason for getting into politics was just simply this: I was, as a small businessman, just trying to grow and expand my business here in the Lowcountry, and I saw firsthand the difficulties that we small business owners go through with trying to buy land and simply build a building on it to create jobs, to provide a service to the community. How burdensome and difficult and the red tape that's involved in that, and how expensive it is.
Yeah.
And so I just wondered, and when I met with Mayor Joe Raleigh when we were expanding in West Ashley on Beast Fair Road, and then I met again with Mayor Billy Swales in Mount Pleasant when we were doing some renovation over there and expanding in that market. Um, who is looking out for the businessman? I mean, what members of town council have really done what we were talking about doing?
Yeah.
Bought land and improved it, and actually written a check, and knows what writing a check for an impact fee really feels like.
Right.
And so that's really where the seed got planted. And I was encouraged to run for town council, and was successful running for Mount Pleasant Town Council, and have been served one term there before going to the state house.
Yeah.
Um, and the journey began even before that with running for unsuccessfully, I might add,
Yeah.
for county council. So
Mhm.
I have stepped up and ran for an elected official position and lost, and
Mhm.
I have also stepped up and ran for an elected official position and won.
Yeah.
So I know what it's like on both sides.
Yeah. And what happens when you lose? I mean, how do you recover from that? Because, it's not an inexpensive proposition. And you probably say, wait a minute, I don't want to do this again. So what brought you back to the table to keep going?
Well, I can tell you it's not an inexpensive process, and it is quite humbling. Even the whole campaigning to go knock on your friends' doors and people that you don't know, walking through neighborhoods that allow you to still do old-fashioned door knocking, to say hello. My name is Mark Smith. I'm running for to be your elected official in whatever office it is that you're running for. Nothing more humbling than going to do that.
Yeah.
And it really is an incredible opportunity to truly meet your future constituents and be able to ask them what issues are important to them. And I'll tell you, through that process, you learn a lot, and it is truly the lower you are in terms of town council versus the state house versus the federal level, the closer you are to the people, the more interaction you're going to have, and the more accountability we elected officials have, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And running and winning is awesome. Let me just say that. And running and losing sucks. Let me just say that as well.
Sure.
It absolutely sucks, and it stings. And you feel like you disappointed your family, your friends, and folks who wrote campaign contributions and donated their money to you. As a candidate, you really feel like you've let a lot of people down. But
Yeah.
I got to say, it's just like in life, in our personal lives, in our professional lives, and even in the political lives. Winning and losing are all part of the journey and part of the process. And we don't always win in every areas of our lives.
Yeah.
We do fail, and oftentimes we'll fail in every area of our lives.
Yeah.
But the key is to make sure that we fail forward, and
Yeah.
that we continue to understand why God put that opportunity in your path, and were you obedient to his plans or were you not? And what were the lessons you can learn from that experience, and have that bring forward to make you a better, more rounded educated and experienced person, we call that seasoned or oftentimes wisdom, right?
Yeah.
And and losing in life, just like winning in life, is all part of life,
Yeah.
and both are very valuable.
Absolutely. I've definitely learned more when I've lost, as painful as it's been, than when it's been an easy win. But tell me this, now that you've been on the other side, go back to when before you got into that process. What are some preconceived myths that you thought about politicians that now you have a different viewpoint on? I think people would really like to know that because it's before you do something, we sit and we're armchair quarterbacks and we say, oh, well, it's that person. But what are some things that you thought you knew about politics that are completely different?
Well, it's easy to cast stones and judgment from the sidelines. We call them the cheap seats, right? And I sat in those cheap seats for many years as well. And you see your elected officials, and oftentimes they have their suits on and they're looking, they're on their A game, and they're just sharp all the time. And you wonder, do those people actually ever do any work? And also there's from a negative perspective, you think, oh, those folks are loaded and just wealthy and oftentimes on the take, and they're all corrupt and crooks, and they look so good, or they have that brand new shiny car or that new house on the right side of town and live in the right neighborhood, because they're all corrupt and on the take. Well, I can tell you that there are many of us who are not crooks and are not on the take, and work very, very hard in our private lives to be able to afford what we have. And so, if you are looking to run for a municipal level, like a town council, even a water commissioner level in the towns, those positions are really, really important, and we need good people to be serving in those positions.
Yeah.
State house and the state representatives and the state senators, county level, all of those are critically important, that we have members of our communities who've lived here, who are entrenched in the communities, who are vested in these communities, to be a part of shaping what those communities look like today and even tomorrow, to be involved in a comprehensive land use plan,
Yeah.
as the municipalities are deciding, hey, what do we want the growth, urban growth boundaries of our municipality to look like? Where do we want to have density? Because as more and more people continue to call South Carolina home, and more and more people decide to call Mount Pleasant, Daniel Island, and the greater Charleston, Lowcountry area home, um, we are not going to be able to shut that down and say, okay, we've now hit capacity, so we're no longer going to allow any more growth in our town.
Right.
Because there's this thing called property rights, and people who own land have vested rights that they can improve their property based on the current zoning and ordinances of those properties. So, and sometimes people want to look for an upzoning so they can get more density in that zoning. And if it aligns with the town's comprehensive land use plan along these urban corridors, where the town says, okay, we want more density in this area, and maybe we will have multifamily housing that can include more than 1 story, 2 story,
Yeah.
three-story apartment condominium facilities there. Um, Being a part of shaping that community and the quality of life, making sure that we're preserving this pristine areas that we get to enjoy, the marsh areas that you and I see. And I know we both try to prioritize with our wives and with our families to be able to enjoy beautiful Shem Creek. Can
Mhm.
you imagine Shem Creek with no fishing boats and no shrimp boats tied to those docks? I mean, that's part of who we are in our culture. And being a member of Mount Pleasant Town Council, when I served on council, I was able to meet with those fishermen and those shrimpers, and to understand what those needs are, and to think, and where we are today, that the public access to be able to have access to the water, renting those kayaks, those paddle boards, making sure the shrimp boats have docks to tie up to, helping them from a business perspective to be able to have gas to put in their boats, ice to be able to ice their fish down, and the public to be able to walk around those boardwalks now all the way around Shem Creek without having to get on that dangerous highway and then climb up a hill, get on a dangerous highway, walk across a very narrow crosswalk that was never meant to be a multi-purpose path crosswalk. But now look what we've been able to do in Mount Pleasant compared to where we were just even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So running for Mount Pleasant Town Council and serving an elected official capacity really allows you to help shape the communities, soccer fields,
Yeah.
making sure that we have enough lacrosse fields, and even what's the number one fastest growing sport in America right now? Pickleball, right?
Yeah.
So being able to transform some of those old tennis courts, and as we're redeveloping and redesigning some of the areas of Mount Pleasant, being able to incorporate the quality of life items that we citizens want to have as part of our community. It really is a true significant blessing.
Yeah, we certainly appreciate all that hard work, and you can see it paying off in the local community. So when you're serving and you're in that local capacity and you're getting some wins and you're seeing yourself making some progress, what started the thought process for you that you said, "Hey, maybe there's a higher office for me?" Like what was going through your mind at that point?
It's for me when I served on Mount Pleasant Town Council and the State House seat opened up. First of all, it was an opportunity that opened up and presented itself that I never dreamed or thought about that I was going to be a state representative at any point. I was perfectly happy and based on the votes that I'd had and the feedback that I'd gotten from the community, from both written communications, even in the forms of financial contributions into my campaign account. David, I thought I would have served several years, several terms on Mount Pleasant Town Council, and I was fulfilled and happy in that role,
Yeah,
especially while my three sons were growing up in the community and part of the public school system here in the Mount Pleasant community. But as they got older and graduated, that state house seat opportunity opened up, and people, the business community and some of my family, friends, and neighbors said, "Hey, Mark, we really like what you're doing on Mount Pleasant Town Council. We'd love to have your conservative voice go on a higher level and service in a role in the state government."
right.
So that's when the opportunity presented itself. And we know how the old saying goes, when opportunity is met with talent and they come together and the timing is right, some amazing things can happen out of that. And I do believe my collaborative nature, from which I always try to govern, just like I run my private business, just
Yeah,
like I run my family and my role as husband and my role as father in my family, being collaborative in nature, always seeking win-win, never seeking a win-lose situation.
yeah,
Um, that has served me very, very well. And I believe that's part of the reason why I did not have any primary opposition after my first year in the state house, David, and nor did I have any general opposition because I have been very collaborative in working on the Republican side of the aisle as well as the Democrat side of the aisle. Because most of the issues we're dealing with in the state are bipartisan issues. I
yeah,
don't drive on a Republican or a Democrat side of the road. Our
right,
bridges are not Republican or Democrat.
right.
The taxes that were so my colleagues on the other side of the aisle and I will disagree on some issues all the time, but the overwhelming majority of the issues, and I believe that's why the Speaker of the House asked me to be a whip
Yeah,
and join the leadership team because he saw that I was able to communicate and articulate and get people to buy into the bigger vision while we're trying to get bills debated and across the finish line to send them to the Senate and ultimately to the governor's desk to sign into law. So
yeah.
it's been an incredible opportunity, and I've learned a lot, I've grown a lot, and it just has been humbling. And never would I have ever imagined I would consider running for Congress. And here I am now with another significant opportunity presenting itself, and same family, group, and friends, and others saying, "Mark, we need that conservative voice of reason rooted from a biblical worldview perspective from which you make decisions that are always collaborative in nature. We need that in DC, and we would love for you to step up and run for that seat." And so here we are, David.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Now, tell me how you deal with that conflict when there are those issues that you have to fight for. When they do fall in that bucket that's not, hey, sometimes we're not going to agree on maybe these top five things, but when you run into that conflict, just how does Mark approach that with the hope of striking that win-win?
One of the things that I think is really unique and important to me is that what I do for a living reminds me every single day how short and precious life is, right? And I in my profession, unfortunately, my staff and I look death in the eye every single day, and we're dealing with not just people who are lived a long life and die of old age. We unfortunately have to deal with untimely, unexpected deaths of children, of colleagues our age, as well as our parents' age as well. So, as we know, it touches every generation and every age. And so, for me, I think about my legacy and what my unborn grandchildren are going to say about their grandfather often.
Yeah.
And that helps me stay true to my core values from which I always try to come back to, from which I make decisions that do not violate my core values.
Yeah.
And I've been in an elected office for long enough now that everyone knows Mark Smith's vote's not for sale.
Yeah.
Someone may contribute to my campaign contribution, my campaign account, but that does not mean that I'm beholding and I'm going to vote for every issue that you bring forward. In fact, I've been on the record multiple times with folks who've said, hey, I wrote him $1,000 maximum check as a state representative. And when it came time for my profession's bill to come forward, he didn't vote the way that I wanted him to vote, but he at least called me and communicated to me and allowed me to come in and meet with him and have a discussion with him that was based in civility, because it's just like grandma taught us, right? Follow the golden rule, treat people
Yeah.
the way that you want to be treated, and the rest really takes care of itself. And so making sure that everyone understands no matter if I'm with you on an issue or not, I'm always going to take the phone call, always going to read your email, and I'll certainly always take the meeting. And I'll
Yeah.
give you time to convince me or at least point out the facts as they are to you. And then I'll communicate back to you equally respectfully to tell you where I am on the issue. So there's never any surprises. And
Yeah.
even in leadership in the House, and leadership on town council, the mayor and the speaker in the House. I haven't always voted on every issue like they have voted, or have maybe sometimes would hope I would have voted. But what they never did is they never got a surprise from me, because I would always meet with them ahead of time, seeking out that information to have them help me understand why they are on an issue, on a side of an issue. Because, those pesky facts, David,
Yeah.
oftentimes get in the way of the false narrative that people want to oftentimes spread on Facebook and social media, and sometimes even on the news. So you do as much good as you can everywhere as you can for as long as you can, just like grandma taught us. And
Yeah.
so for me, I have changed my position during debates on issues before votes are cast, based on facts coming in that I simply did not know. Because
Right.
there's no way any one of us can be a subject matter expert on every single one of the items that come before us, on town council or in the state house or in DC.
Yeah.
We have to rely on subject matter experts to come in and educate us and make sure that we understand what oftentimes are those unintended consequences of bills that may go through when we don't know all the facts on those. So having a wise council who, in my role as an elected official, those wise council members are those subject matter experts who are trusted friends and allies that that you can always call, text, or will call and text you when those items come up before you. So you got to be humble enough to be able to surround yourself and not be that um, know-it-all who's really willing to receive information. And that's been my authentic walk that I've always tried to walk. And I believe that hopefully will be part of my legacy when I'm no longer here to talk about who Mark Smith is.
Yeah, and it seems that if you are entering, my impression is, if from what you've said, and I really appreciate that approach, when you enter this life of public service, when you get the internal motivation to say, "Hey, I'm going to run for an office," you may very well be going into that with a preconceived notion of this is the agenda that I think is going to be best. And
Right.
and then when you step into the listening, which is such a powerful tool, you start to realize, if I'm hearing you, that you're really more of a public servant. It's not so much about what this maybe preconceived agenda might have been. it's more about what the people are communicating to you. And then you have to be somewhat of a referee or maybe a judge to gather all those facts to cast the most important vote possible based on the feedback that you're given. So when you first started and you wanted to serve,
Right.
was it always that approach, or did you grow, as a human in that process?
For me, David, that's how I ran my business because, many would say statistically, I probably should not be where I am today, right? I I'm born into a generational family of poverty from Bamberg, South Carolina. My grandparents were retired cotton mill workers.
Wow.
I grew up as the youngest of three sons in a single mom household. Mom worked in a sewing room when I was growing up. I know what hard times look like, and I know what it's like when there's too much month at the end of the money. And my mom just simply, while working two jobs, could not make ends meet. We'd have to move back in with my grandmother. And what that taught me, that's the grit that is inside of me that was instilled in me from the two of them. That, along with that strong work ethic that they showed me and walked out and taught me, that I got to see every single day with their strong work ethics. And then they told me two things, David. It wasn't very difficult. My grandma, I can see her now shaking her little finger at me, and she'd say, Mark, you can have and be anything you want in life if you'll just do two things, son. Stay you behind in school and get your education. And at the same time, stay on your knees and give God thanks and praise for what you do have.
Yeah.
Now, by many standards, from the outside looking in, judging my family when I grew up, we didn't have much material things. In fact, we were, as we would say, we were a poor white working class family. But David, let me tell you something. We were wealthy and rich in all the right things.
Yeah.
That strong work ethic rooted in a love and commitment to serving and honoring God in everything that we have. Those are the things who helped shape Mark Smith into the man he is. And I was able to bring that into my life. And I believe with all of my heart, which is why I'm running for Congress and why I decided to step up to serve in the state house. The American dream is not dead. It
Right.
doesn't matter where you begin or what you begin with. What really matters is what you do with what you've been given, and that you follow some good morals and values that are rooted from a biblical worldview perspective, and let that be your true north and your guiding compass from which all decisions are made. Not just on Sunday when you're in church, but Monday through Friday when you're going to work as well.
Yeah.
So the same Mark that's in church on Sunday is the same Mark who prays for and prays with his staff at work, is the same Mark who's been in the state house, who prays for and prays with all of my colleagues in the house. And I've been leading the weekly Bible study all 5 years that I've been in the state house on Wednesday mornings. Because it's just so wonderful when you're in the middle of that debate we're in session Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, to have that Wednesday morning get right back centered to what really matters and keep first things first. And that's honoring God in all that we do.
I bet that's a powerful meeting on Wednesday mornings.
It really is. It's been a blessing.
So you've told us so many great skills, listening and collaborating with people. But if there's someone out there that says maybe they want to give it a shot, they want to run for, who knows, their
A
school
school board.
president. Yeah, their school
Yeah, school,
president, their
school,
school
school
board.
board, water
Yeah,
commissioners, mayors, council members, they're all important on every level. We need to have people. But if they're thinking about it, David, and what my advice to them would be, you know, make sure, first of all, get your spouse's permission. Make sure
yeah,
there's buy-in from the home. Because if there's not a good, solid support system, it's just like anything we do in life. If we want to go out and build a business, if we want to go out and pursue a sports endeavor, you got to have a strong foundation from which you start every single day.
yeah,
So talk to your spouse, let them be, or your partner, or your children, or parents, whoever it is, and make sure they're allow them to hold you accountable.
yeah,
Talk to them
absolutely.
and get their blessing, and then seek out other wise council members. Talk to your friends and colleagues and business professional folks. And if they're not buying in and saying, you know what, that makes a lot of sense, you should do that, and you don't hear that more than, Mark, have you lost your mind? You're crazy. Then you may need to make sure you're listening to the wise counsel, and don't get ahead of yourself and keep pride and ego out of it. and
Yeah.
always approach it from a servant leader perspective.
Yeah. And what are some other parting words that you could give on the type of skills that are necessary? I would think that someone would have to be a good communicator, but what are some other skills that would be necessary?
You know, I for me, humility comes right to mind. What we don't need is more disruptors, right?
Mhm.
Every it seems like there's so much focus on who can get on Fox News or who can make the local news station and have a news interview and yell and scream and tell everybody how right you are and how wrong everyone else is.
Yeah.
You know, if we would, if more of us would resign as the general manager of the universe
Yeah.
and realize that people have the right to be wrong and believe whatever it is that they want to believe. It is okay to fight hard for what you believe,
Yeah.
but not every, you're never going to have a 100% approval rating
Yeah.
and you're never going to have a 100% buy-in on any issue. And that's okay.
Yeah.
This is still the greatest country in the world to live in. And our forefathers got it right. And we just got to get back to good, healthy debates and civility. And when the votes are cast and you win, great. Don't gloat. Just enjoy the win and allow the people who lost the opportunity to get over that loss. And then at the end of the day, come back together as quickly as we can because we're so much better as a community, as a society, when we're all rowing towards the same end result, knowing that we won't agree on every issue all the time. My wife of 32 years and I, David, this is going to be breaking news to you. I know you're not going to believe this, but she and I don't agree on every issue every single time. Now, I know that surprises you, doesn't it?
Yeah, no,
No, of course it doesn't, because it's the same with you and Amanda.
no.
No way y'all agree on everything all the time. And guess what? We've been able to stay married for 32 years and make this relationship work by communicating and collaborating and allowing each other to be right and wrong and choose your battles wisely.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, if we could just get back to some good old fashioned constituent services, serving the people instead of serving ourselves,
Yeah.
and focusing on doing the work of people instead of what I can do to advance myself and
Yeah.
my personal agenda, life would be so much better. And I got to tell you, I do believe that would help lower the temperature a little bit because it does seem like we've been living in times for far too long now that we're just 1 or 2 degrees below boiling, and the slightest thing can make us reach our boiling point, and then we just explode. And when we explode, good communication skills that include listening typically doesn't happen. And that's in no one's best interest.
Yeah, and I think that's not only a timeless message, that's a very timely message. And
Yes.
and I certainly appreciate the time that we've had together today. I think that the message is fantastic and it's wonderful. I can see your grandmother shaking her finger at you. Um, and I know she's proud of you as well. So as we are, and thank you for your time. And we're proud of everything that you're doing and definitely looking forward to seeing where you go from here. And I appreciate you answering the call when those opportunities present themselves, because sometimes when opportunities present themselves, they seem like too big of a challenge, or maybe I shouldn't do that, or maybe that's not for me. And I applaud you for taking the risk every time those opportunities come up. So we're wishing
Well,
you
thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for what you're doing, even by just providing this opportunity to share my message with them. Keep up the great work. I'm super proud of you, David. I mean that, and your team. And it's a pleasure and an honor to call you a friend.
well. Same goes here. Have a great night. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.